Hello everyone. I started to play chess some years ago, and this year I started also to play some tournaments. My current FIDE rating is 1909, and my online rating is 2350. Today I will share with you what is needed for me to go from 0 to 2300 on chess.com. At the beginning of your journey, there are only four rules. First one, at least rapid games. Don't play Blitz or Bullet or something like this. Chess is a game of patterns, and you need time to recognize those patterns. When you start to play, you don't even know how the pieces moves, and you need time to think what moves are available, what you can take from the position, which pieces is hanging, and what you are threatening and what your opponent is threatening. So I think that happens frequently is that we are used, maybe you started to play chess and we are used to see Hikaru or Narditsky playing Bullet and Blitz on streaming on Twitch, and we want to emulate those things. But when we start, we can't do that. We need time to think and to understand what is possible in the position. So, the more the time format of the game is, the better it is. Let's go to the second one. Use your time. A lot of players find themselves in a losing position in a 10 minutes game after 1 minute, 1 minute and a half. They blunder their pieces. So if you have the time, use it. Third one, and the more important one, if you are up material, just trade. A lot of players doesn't trade. They try to complicate the things. But if you are up material, just trade and reach a position that is more comfortable, that is more holdable, and that you understand better, in which there are less threat. I will do an example. If you are up material, just exchange and finish in a position that is comfortable for you. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns, and our opponent has 5 pawns. And the pieces are equal. So the first thing that we have to think is to trade. Right now the position is a mess. You don't know what is happening, but let's just trade and let's see. So first, queen. Now it's forced. Rook takes. We take. Rook takes. We take. Knight takes. We take the bishop. Pawn takes. And we take also the other knight. And now that we traded pieces, the position is a lot more comfortable than before. And we are up 2 pawns. These pawns are double. And we are completely fine. Plus, we are not hanging anything because in the previous position, you never know what can happen. With a lot of pieces, maybe we can lose something. So, if you're up material, just trade. The fourth one and the last one for the range 0500 is don't do fancy stuff. Just control the center with the pieces and with the pawns. So if your opponent doesn't do that, if your opponent start to play b6, g6, a6, knight h3, knight a3, moves, random moves like this, you by controlling the center, you will reach a position that is just better. So focus on control the e4, e5, d4, and d5 square. Develop first the knight, then the bishop. So the knight wants to go on f3, on c3 for white, and for black on c6 and on f6. Then a small advice is seeing that we want our knight on f3 and on c3 because are the natural square of develop first your knight and then you will decide later on when where is the better place for your bishop. So we are white, we never study any opening, and we don't know anything about chess theory. But what we know is that we have to control the center with our pawns and with our pieces. So we will open with e4 or d4, doesn't do any much difference. And now we are controlling the d5 square. So let's say that our opponent play b6. And as you can see here, he is not controlling the center. But we don't think too much on this move. And we keep going with our plan. Just control the center. And now we are controlling these two squares and also these other two. And our opponent plays d6. And we keep controlling the center with f4 is completely fine. And now our opponent develop a knight on f6. So we will play knight c3, we will protect this pawn, and we are controlling the center. And just to show you how quickly the things can go wrong, let's say that our opponent here play e6, we play knight f3, just to control the center, and queen d7, and here we already strike in the center, we push, we are threatening the knight, our opponent doesn't take, and just move the knight on h5. And now this knight is trapped. If we push the g4 pawn, this knight has no retreating square, and he will have to sacrifice the knight for the pawn. And here we are up material, and as I told you before, now we will exchange everything. So now let's go to the range 500, 1000. The first advice is stick to an opening. From now on, you can start to think on the openings and on the defenses. So e4 leads to a more tactical game, d4 to a more positional one. The pros of d4 is also that if you want to avoid a lot of chess theory, you can always play some system like the London system or the Colle system. I will show you. So if we don't want to study too much theory, we can play d4, and it's not so much important what black replies, because we want to reach a system, we want to reach a setup. So let's say d4, d5, and this is called London system, where we place the bishop on the f4 square, and let's say white does this move, will develop normally, and it's not important. As you can see, even if white try to pin our knight, we can, let's say this move, we will place the pawn on c3, and after we develop, we will bring our knight here, let's say castle, castle, and after knight d7, we can play queen c2, and we are completely fine. This is called London system, where we put our pieces like a triangle, and we place our bishop on f4, and then we will go for the push, we will try to push e4 and maybe e5. So now I did this move for black, but if you put this system in your games, you will see that it's a really solid one, and black can't really stop you from reach this system. Another idea is the Colle system, in which instead that placing the bishop on f4, we will push b3 and place the bishop on b2. I show you. So here we still play d4, d5, we will develop the knight, and as you can see, I'm developing everything toward the center. So after, let's say c5, we can push on b3, and I don't know, maybe we reach this position, bishop here, knight here, castle, push, and after knight here, and bishop d3, this is called Colle system. So, what are the pros of sticking to an opening? By sticking to an opening, you can start to memorize the common sequence of moves that happens in your game. And with that, and by playing a lot of games and gaining a lot of experience, you can also recognize if a move never happened in your game. It means that most likely is an error, and you can spend time to punish it. The second advice is analyze every game, at least the rapid ones. If you don't want to pay the subscription on chess.com, it's okay. You can play only chess that has infinite analysis. But maybe some of you prefers to play on chess.com. You can still create an account on Lichess, then go to your game on chess.com, copy the PGN and paste it on Lichess and analyze the game. So you can see the errors, you can see also the inaccuracy, and you can start to build this knowledge in your head of the openings and of the things that you should do in openings, and maybe also to spot some errors, some tactical errors in the middle game. Third advice is learn basic checkmates and endgames. This has two purposes. First, if you find yourself in a winning situation, you will not spend time to win that game. I personally lost a lot of games when I started to play chess because even if I knew how to checkmate my opponent, I didn't have enough time. I wasn't so able to convert an advantage, but maybe with more time I could have done it. So learn checkmates and endgames, and by pre-moving, you will also be able to checkmate your opponent even with 10 seconds on the clock. The second purpose of this tip, and the best one, is that if you find yourself in a middle game with some pieces, or maybe in an end game, but with 2-3 pieces on the board, with a lot of pawns, and you can imagine that if a situation happen on the board, if you trade some pieces, you will be able easily to win that game. You can trade everything, finish in that situation, and win in 5 seconds. So learn the checkmates, at least the basic one, like rook versus king, queen versus king, the bishop pair, and also pawn versus king, pawn and king versus king. Sometimes is a draw, sometimes it isn't. I will show you. The first endgame is a rook versus king, and the one with the queen is pretty similar because the queen moves like the rook, so nothing to be worried. And the idea here is to cut off the king and let black king goes on this rank, and then we will deliver checkmate. How can we do it? By placing our king in front of black king, and when is our move and we reach this position, by delivering a checkmate, the black king has to retreat. I will show you. Here we place the king here, and we are cutting off the black king. And we keep moving, and when the black king is in front of our king, we will deliver checkmate. And now the black king is forced to go to retreat, and we keep doing the same stuff. Here we move the rook, and we will keep going, and here is checkmate. But it's not always so easy. Let's say that the position is this one. If we go for the same plan, so if we place the king on f6, now is black turn, and black will move. And if we try to do the same stuff, black will come back in the previous square. So what we want to do is lose a tempo. We will move the rook, and now if the black king goes here, we will deliver checkmate, and if he goes back, we will deliver checkmate anyway. The second endgame that I want to show you, the second checkmate, is the bishop pair. So the idea to deliver checkmate with the bishop pair is to bring our bishop in the center, cut off the escape square for the king, and once the black king is on the corner, we will deliver checkmate. So we can move something like this, and here, as you can see, we are cutting off these squares for the black king, and now the black king can move only in these 5 squares, so we will keep doing the same stuff. Even here, we are cutting off these squares, and now the king has only 3 options, so we will keep going, and here we are forcing the king to go back, and we are pushing the king in the corner, and once we reach this position, as you can see, we are controlling these squares with our king and with the bishop. Now the king is forced to go here, and once he goes there, we will give a check. This is forced, and checkmate. So, if you can learn how to do it fast, you will win a lot of games, but more important, you will not lose in time trouble. Let's go now to the pawn versus king. So this is the endgame with pawn versus king, and this is a trick one, because if we keep pushing the pawn to promote, after a sequence of moves, this is stalemate, and we will draw this game. But what we want to do, instead of pushing the pawn, is first bring the king. So king c5, and now if we keep going, the king will support the run of the pawn. So after this sequence of moves, we will be able to promote and win the game. The last advice for this range is do tactics. This is an advice that you should keep following even when you will reach 2000. By doing tactics, you will spot a first sequence of moves that wins material or that simplify the position enough to let you win that game. Then, by doing tactics, you will become faster, you will start to calculate faster in your mind, and you will also save a lot of time that during a game is a key factor. Only chess you can do infinite tactics, and you can even set some puzzle theme like this. Only chess, you can go here on puzzle, general one, and puzzle themes. So if you click on it, you will find a lot of interesting themes for the puzzles, like rook endgame, pawn endgame, queen endgame, but even other one like advanced pawn attacking f2 or f7, and you can learn a lot of stuff here. And now we reach the 1000, 1500 range. Here is where the concept like tempos and activity start to become important. The first advice for this range is keep it simple. A lot of players blunder some pieces because they try to complicate the things too much. This thing can be a double-edged sword, but trust me, your opponent will blunder the pieces. So just wait for them. The second advice is don't react to everything. Sometimes the move can seem scary, but most of the times, if you react to your opponent's plan, you will give credit to that plan. And things that weren't working before, now they works. I will do an example. On this position is black to move, and black moves f4. And now we are scared that black will push g4, then push f3. So we try to prevent this stuff, and we play h3. So if black push, we trade. But this move is in fact a blunder, because if we do it after the trade, we want to push, let's say, so c5, and here we will lose, because after take, black will promote a pawn, we will promote, but there is a check, we lose the queen, and we lose the game. The best way to meet that push was just keep going with our plan. So instead of playing h3, we could have played c5. So with c5, after this trade, we can prevent the pawn from queening by king d3. And if they push, we will go on e2, and here we will be the one that will queen the pawn. So the suggestion is this. For sure, this is an easy position, but seriously, a lot of times in complicated position, we tend to be scared of the moves of our opponent, so we try to prevent something that was not so scary in the end. And by preventing that something, we will give credit to the plan of our opponent. So don't be scared, just calculate, keep calm, and go for your plan. Third and last advice is increase the power of your pieces. Concept like outpost or rook on the 7th rank can be decisive in your games. In this position is white to move, and the problem for black is that even if the material is equal, we have this strong knight on e5 that can't be traded for the bishop, so this knight will stay here forever if we want. And some sequence of move, like let's say these ones, we can take the pawn, but even if they try to defend, we can later on trade everything, and after this sequence, we will be able to gain the pawn and to win the game. So this is an outpost. Let's see some more difficult positions. Here the material is equal, but we have this nice outpost on c6. So this knight is blocking everything in black position. The only piece that can trade this knight is this other knight. So if we are able to get rid of the knight on f6, we will win this game, because positionally we are better. So the move that we play is bishop g5. Now, if black doesn't do anything and play, let's say, h6, we will happily trade this knight and bring the rook on d7. So we will take control also of the 7th rank. But if black tries to save this knight with, let's say, knight e8, we will keep going with the rook on the 7th rank. And after a couple of moves, this position becomes unplayable for black. We will bring our queen on c4, pinning the king. and after some moves we will deliver checkmate. So this is just to show you how strong is an outpost and how strong are the rooks on the 7th rank. If you are able to understand this concept and to increase your knowledge on how to create outpost or how to infiltrate in the position of your opponent with the rooks on the 7th rank, you will win a lot of games. And now the good stuff, the range 1500, 2000. So the first advice is learn the positional weaknesses. For example, the e6 square in the advanced French, I will show you. So in this position, for example, we are white and we want to first trade the rooks and then move the knight on d6. And from d6, the knight will put pressure on all black position. And this move is particularly strong when the f pawn is gone, because then there is no the f6 push that will destabilize the center. And a good strategy to win this game, positionally speaking, could be the one of trading the two queens and this light square bishop for the knight on G. Why? Because yeah, generally the bishops are better than the knights on the endgame. But as you can see here, the base of the pawn chain is on a dark square, and even the knight is on a dark square. So if we can trade this bishop for this knight, there will be no pieces to threaten the base of the pawn chain and to threaten a trade of pieces. And we will positionally we will be winning. Other positional weaknesses are, for example, the isolated pawns and the loss of the light square bishop in the Catalan. Because once the light square bishop goes away from a white side, I mean, the light squares in general will be weak. So that diagonal will become really important for black attack, and especially the f3 squared, in which a knight can land there and create a lot of problems. The second advice is play also for the endgame. An error that happens frequently is that the players try to end the game during the middle game. But if there is an endgame that is better for us, we should go for it. We should trade everything and play in that endgame. It doesn't make sense to stay in a position in which also our opponent has victory chances. So we can finish in a bit more boring game, but in a game in which only we can win. Remember that the aim is not to finish the game in a few moves, but to win. Third one is don't trust the engine. It can seem strange, but nowadays with all the engines, Stockfish, and all this suggestion that comes from the computers, we tend to enter in a position that is not so comfortable. So maybe Stockfish suggests a particular line, but that in the end only a computer can find the right sequence. So sometimes it's better to end in a to do not wrong moves, but sidelines. Only because the plans are more easy to understand. We are not computers, so the practicality of a position is essential. It's better to do a move that is not the first one but leads to comfortable position compared to the first choice of the engine, if then we are not able to find the follow-up. Now, 2000, 2200. First advice is change openings. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I told you before that you have to stick to an opening. Yeah, but it's because when you are low-rated players, you want to stick to an opening because you have to understand the concept, other concept of chess. So don't go on fields that you are not that you don't feel comfortable. Instead, when you reach 2000, 2200, you want to change openings because you will meet opponents that knows their theory, and they will bring you outside. So maybe in positions in which you are less comfortable. And if you change openings, you will start to see other structures, other plans of attacking, and all a whole different new world. And once you go back to your main opening, you can put the concept that you understand in the other openings in your new game. And so you will play better than before. Then the games are not always tactical or positional. Most of the times are a combination of both of them. Thanks to a positional game, you will find yourself in a tactical situation. And I think it was Bobby Fischer that said that tactics flows from a superior position. Second advice is learn the structures. Most of the times, when you will play, if you want to gain elo, you have to know the structure because it's the pawn structure that does the game. Every structure has key points, like um, for example, the fianchetto has some plans of pushing the h4, h5, and even h6 pawn. Maybe there are lines in the Sicilian in which you can also sacrifice the rook for the knight on h5 when you are able to push h4, h5, like in the accelerated dragons. Then there are other structures like D4, E5 in the advanced French, but also in other openings. And in those structures, for sure, the C5 push from black side is really important. And once the C5 pawn will be traded for the D4 pawn and the C3 pawn retake, then the d6 square will be really important. I already show you, but also the c4 square for some counterplay from black side will be important. So a lot of times, if you know the structure and you know the general ideas and the general plans to play against a structure, the moves will come naturally. So learn how to attack a fianchetto, learn to deal with the hanging pawns or even with the isolated pawns. Third one and last one, again, do tactics. If there is a tactic, for sure will be more difficult than the one that we were used to face. So keep doing tactics, and you will kinda sense if there is something strange in the position. Remember that chess is a game of patterns, and even if we can't really understand what is wrong in a position, our brain will tell us that something is off. I will show you a position from one of my games in a tournament. So it was my second tournament, and here I played Bishop G5, and my opponent replied with Queen D6. And this at this point I didn't spend so much time, but on this move I spent 40 minutes. I couldn't find a solution, but I don't know, but there is something strange about the move Queen D6. I will show you the follow up that is completely crazy. Here I should have played Knight takes F7 because take, and the tactic was this. After King F8, I can take on D5, and now I'm threatening the rook. And if he tries to save it, I have bishop a2 with mate. So here he should have played this, but also here I can take with the rook. In this position is a crazy tactic, and for sure it was really hard to spot it. But what I mean is that even if I couldn't find a solution, I spent 40 minutes on this move only because my brain was telling me that something is off, that Queen D6 is kind of wrong. And maybe with more practice on the tactics, I could have win this game, and in the end, I draw it. And now 2200 and plus. I can't really tell you how to proceed from this point. From what I understood, is helpful to play sidelines. Bring your opponent out of his theory, and you will save a lot of times in position in which you are comfortable, in which you are familiar, but your opponent doesn't know really well the common scheme. Then another factor is the psychological factor is also decisive, because if you are losing, you can still create a lot of problems to your opponent. So when you blunder something, just pause for a moment, reset the emotions, and then start to play and start to put pressure to your opponent. In chess, there is also the time that is a key factor. So if you cannot defend properly for a huge amount of time, your opponent will start to feel the pressure and will leave you also some counterplay. And obviously, study the end games. A good player is a player that knows the end games. A lot of FIDE master, but also international masters, blunders in the end game. Maybe is winning and then is a draw, or maybe is a draw and then is losing. So study the end games for two reasons. First, don't lose games that are draw. And second one, most important one, if you know that an end game is good, in the middle game, you can force some trade, you can force the position to reach that end game. And there are not so much players that in a middle game can think that maybe in 10 moves you will trade 3, 4, or also 5 pieces, and you will finish in an end game that is a nightmare. And the cool part is also that if you know the end games and you know that an end game is not better for you, you can also have some hints about the move that you have to play in a middle game. So this is everything I think you need to pass from 0 to 2300 on chess.com. If you like the video and you want to support the channel, leave a like, leave a comment, or subscribe. See you in the next video.